Yeah, I believe in you. I don't believe in lucky sevens. I'm not sure about Loch Ness, but I know I believe in angels. I believe in happiness.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's wonderful to see all of you. There we go. I love that. I opened up a different file and I lost my little red X, and I'm like, it's just going to play on and on and on, but it didn't. It disappeared. So I'll have to do that again. That was actually pretty good. Everybody, welcome to the show. I'm really excited to be on this evening. Again, we have our wonderful financial advisor for the news, JC Schweingrouber, and he is connected. But first, I'd like to talk about a sponsor for just a second. Neuromints. I haven't brought up Neuromints all that often. And, they've expanded their product. So I want everybody to go check it out real quick. And I'll make this very simple and quick because I'm going to bring it up to the screen so that if you're watching, you can jot down the website because it is getneuro.com. That's GETNEURO.com. They have gums and mints, but they also have vitality type products as well in gum or mints, and immune boosting things, and not just vitamin C. They really have a great complex, and this is scientifically designed so that the absorption of the product is quick and easy, so that you're not losing a lot of the vitamins that are in there because it's combined with the other supplements and minerals that you need to absorb certain vitamins. So if you didn't know that, do the research, because if you want to get the full benefit of something like, let's say, vitamin C, there are other compounds to take with it so that you fully absorb those vitamins. But anyway, go ahead and go over to CVS, GNC, Amazon, Walmart, or getneuro.com to get today and get a wonderful, mildly caffeinated mint. There's only about 38 milligrams of caffeine in each mint. So that's, maybe a half a cup of coffee. Full cup of coffee would be about 98 milligrams. So it's nice and easy, and it's not going to drop you hard. All right, everybody, let's bring up the guest today, my financial advisor, great person, wonderful, so many other things, right? But I'm not going to blow your cover. So how are you, JC?
Hey, I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing really well. It's great to have you on the show. We haven't spoken to you in a couple of weeks. We are now in first quarter, and there's some interesting stuff going on, right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess the volatility, I guess, going into the end of the year, and everybody was waiting on a Santa Claus rally, and we talked about how bad the numbers were for 2022.
Sure.
The NASDAQ, the Dow, the S&P. But this year, so far, year to date, knock on wood, the indexes are up. The S&P is up about 3.5. So on a year-over-year basis, it's down from this time last year about 11%, roughly.
Okay.
But that's better than where it was last year for the whole year of 2022, down about 19.
Right.
So we've had a nice little run here at the beginning of the year. I think we're getting back into earnings season. And we all sort of know the Federal Reserve is starting to wind down their rate hiking cycle. And we can focus on our companies making the money. Are they hitting the numbers, and what their forward guidance is going to be, considering where interest rates are at and where the economy is at. And we can actually focus on what's happening, the reality, instead of for the time being, the world throwing crazy things at us. I mean, Russia, Ukraine's been going on for almost a year. So, I mean, nobody thought that would happen, but there's still external factors out there, but it got a little quiet. The volatility got dropped, and that was nice to see. So we've started to see companies report their earnings and doing a little better than what we thought they were going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good.
That is good. So let me understand this fully. So you're saying that, yes, the market is up, but roughly from this time last year, it is down about 11%. Is that what everybody was talking about? How we will need to compensate for that 11% to be able to afford everything else around us because of inflation that was happening at that time?
How do you mean?
So, okay, so if the market is up, but it's down roughly 11%, does that correspond with the inflation rate?
Actually, that's a little more than the inflation rate. I think the inflation rate year over year from this time June to or this time sorry January. I'm already thinking of summer. I can't wait for warm weather. Um, so from this time January to this last year to now, we were probably looking at about a year over year rate of about 6.5%. So the market's obviously sold off, and a lot of people think it may be oversold.
Mhm.
It still probably is. But whether so where the market's going to go since it's oversold in the short term, who knows? I mean, you never want to try to predict the short term, but that has a lot to do with inflation, because inflation is a good thing to scare people away,
Mhm.
uh, and because of inflation, people have seen over the last year change some of their shopping patterns, and that's been a big thing in certain sectors. So, um, and still in some sectors like the food sector, inflation's been sticky. The grocery store, you don't really see a whole lot of changes. Retail has started to see prices come down some
Mhm.
or level off. In other words,
Okay. That's interesting because I don't really shop at the big box retail stores, to be honest with you. My life has become so quick paced that almost everything is Amazon. How do you know how that compares the online shopping that doesn't have the overhead versus retail with the overhead? Is there any difference in inflation? Is one a little bit more affordable than the other right now?
I really haven't read anything that said otherwise. Because a lot of those places, those items you buy on Amazon, those are somebody's individual stores you're buying from too, and they may have some overhead costs and things like that that may be built into the price of what they sell. I'm like you; I don't really have a lot of time to go out. I don't really like going to big box stores very much anyway, um, not unless I have to. But so I also shop a lot on Amazon. Um, and yeah, I think like you probably noticed over the last year, some of the things you bought, the prices have went up. Um, and ironically, this is one thing I noticed. I noticed the price, and I don't know in reality if ebooks on average have gone up in cost.
Mhm,
But I noticed some of the books that I'm looking at, they're a little higher than what they were, before I'm used to. I'm like, wow, that's a couple bucks more than I was paying a couple of years ago.
mhm.
It's an ebook. They don't have overhead. I
Mm-mm.
mean, ebooks too. So I don't have overhead. It's all just, other one I split with Amazon. And maybe that's the reason is Amazon takes a little bit of a cut. But yeah, I thought that was kind of odd. So I make more off of an ebook than I would a paperback, which is wild. I can sell an ebook for like $5.99, a paperback for $14.99, and I will still make more off of the ebook.
There's so many changes in the younger generation, and it's quite interesting. If you stop and think about it, an actual physical home phone, a
Hmm.
lot of these 20-year-olds, even myself, like we don't really have a need for it. So you don't have those types of things. A hardback book, is it just seen as clutter to people that are younger than me?
Maybe. I mean, the same thing. I know people who listen to a lot of Audible books, and I got a gift for Christmas of 3 Audible books, 3 points for like one each month, and can get 3 books, and I'll be listening to them on my Alexa. I don't want it to, but or on my computer. But yeah, I noticed with younger people, I guess there's and it does make sense in a way because there's this. I don't say it's a fad, but a trend toward minimalism.
Mm,
I
mm.
don't know if you've ever seen documentaries on the minimalists or anything like that. It's if something doesn't bring you happiness or joy, get rid of it. And it was a really interesting documentary. I see the point of it, but I have 3 bookshelves and have a need for 2 more. I don't know about you, but like the physical books. But maybe it is. A lot of people just live off of their phone. I couldn't. I don't think I could do that.
As much as I want to say innately, I don't think that I could do that. In reality, I do that. And I do appreciate it. I mean, goodness, the amount of work and the amount of things that we can take on today is so magnanimously more. And is that healthy? No, probably not. It's probably keeping the medical sector very, very active in anti-anxiety medication and ADD, ADHD medication, because I think all of us have, distractors, right? And this is totally off of the financial market, but just a random thought that's in my head is like, we all have distractors. But having these things like cell phones where we can watch our TV, we can broadcast from, we can take pictures, we can read books, we can edit our email, we can get onto our work websites and edit within the website. It's like, my goodness, when do we ever shut it off?
That's a good point. And you don't know it, but you just gave an amazing segue to part of what I'm going to talk about in today's little investment lesson. So, and it is, you're exactly right. There's so many things flying at us all the time. And it's like, boom, boom, boom. Your attention's here, your attention's there. Maybe it's not so much so many people have, a growing number of children with ADD. Maybe it's just the culture we live in and they're forced to live that way.
True. Before we get to that, though, I did see something in just a little bit of my reading. You know that I don't do this every day. You do this every day, which is why I'm so grateful that you're here from Vista Front Partners with us. And so I noticed with the market being up, some of the sectors that were also up this week was communication and infotech, which I thought was quite interesting because so Alphabet is up, but they're laying off. How does that work when you see a big company like that, Alphabet being Google, and they're laying off in masses, or Amazon and they're laying off in masses? Is that at this point in time making them stronger because it's automation that's coming in to replace things?
A little bit of both. It's not just those companies, but a lot of the big tech companies, like they're the first ones that are announcing a lot of layoffs because of a potential recession. So they're planning for it. But it's not just them. It's J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs. There's a lot of businesses now that are starting to announce this layoff policy, and we'll see more of that going through the quarter as companies announce their earnings. But a couple of things it does. Trying to think of a good analogy. Okay, you know how when the government, we're about to run into like this crisis. They call it a crisis all the time, but where we run up against the debt limit and we have to raise the debt ceiling, and then they're thinking, oh no, we're going to default, and they try to panic everybody and tell them you're not going to get your Social Security checks and the military's not getting paid, but in reality, that's all automatic. They all get paid. So it's a scare tactic. It never happens. But when the government shuts down, or they what's the first thing they do? They keep the essential part of the government open. That never closes. But they send home non-essential workers. And every time they do that, and they keep using that word over and over, non-essential, non-essential. And I'm thinking, if they're not essential, why the hell are they working there? Like, what are we paying for as taxpayers? Yeah, you kind of wonder. So when companies, when they come into, like, they see harder times, they're planning for, rougher economies or whatever in their business, they tend to, what I call, cut the fat off. They want it to be lean and mean as a company, and that's what their shareholders want. So they're getting rid of certain personnel. Is like they've reviewed who's necessary and who's not. And the least necessary people, if they're even necessary, and we often find they're not, because companies grow and get bloated like government at times, they get trimmed off. And I hate people losing their jobs.
Yeah.
But companies have to be sort of lean and mean if they want to compete. So that's sort of a good thing. If you run a company and you have to, and it's like, maybe real estate's not so good, the next couple of quarters is going to be rough, we're going to lay a few people off. That means you're saving money. You can still pay your workers bonuses. You still have your profit margin. And whoever your investors or backers, if you have any, or if it's just the home, well, you get to keep the fruits of your labor. So that's a good thing. You got lean and mean to compete with others locally, because you need those finances to be strong to be able to move forward. All right. So if you're sitting there bleeding cash out in areas you don't need, Well, when it comes to competing later on and other expenses you may need, like advertising or hiring better workers, or increasing your salaries to attract good workers, whatever you need to do, you don't have that cash there because you're already spending it somewhere where it's like not as necessary.
Mhm.
So that's a good thing. And shareholders see that. So when they think, okay, they're going through a process, if it's not restructuring, they're just getting lean and mean, that's the kind of company I want to invest in. So people will tend to buy shares of that because that improves the bottom line and profit margins going forward. And
I find it very interesting and also logical that the financial health or unhealth of a company and other sectors are doing well holds hands with jobs. So, in your opinion, if someone was just laid off, let's say that they're working for Amazon, their entry to mid-level, and they've been laid off, what is a good sector to look to go get a job that might not lay them off as well? Do you have any advice on that?
I mean, it just depends on what the person wants to do. It's kind of tough if you're kind of a white collar worker and have never lifted a hand to, fix a sink. Do you know what there's huge shortages of are right now? Good plumbers, good electricians. You can't export those jobs. I live in a small town, and if we want a really good plumber or somebody to come in and do like some work on your house or whatever, there are people around here in small towns that might be able to do it, but they don't have the insurance or the bonding or whatever. We have to go, say, to Bristol and find somebody over there, a company over there that hires people where they have that insurance and that bonding and the experience to come out here for drive an hour that I have to pay, compensate them for to do a job.
Mhm.
But there are all kinds of jobs like that that need to be filled. The trucking industry, I know some computer nerd that's writing code is not going to say, "Hey, let's drive trucks for a living." You can make $75,000-$80,000 driving a truck for a living, and the trucking industry is short 50,000 drivers right now.
Mhm. That's insane.
There's just need, as far as like getting your hands dirty and delivery and things like that. So there are other things. It just depends, But if somebody's working behind as a an analyst at Google, they might not want to go jump over to Old Dominion and drive trucks around the West.
Mhm.
Um, but they pay great.
Yeah, and that's a great point because you're absolutely right. So the trades, and my parents are a little bit old world. They got married in the early 50s and they really enjoyed that time period of the 40s and 50s. And so their opinion of going to college is really only if you're going for something very specific that you
Mhm,
need a college background in. So they're always pushing, oh, why don't you go into a trade, go into a mechanic or
mhm.
plumbing or electrical? And those, I would have to 100% back you up in that. We can't find them here in Atlanta. It is very hard to find a general construction contractor or a drywall and finish trim people. It's very, very hard. So yeah, I got to back you up. That's great advice, JC.
If you're good at math, we have just a huge shortage of engineers in this country.
Yes.
Creators. I mean, if you have a good imagination and are good at math, um, look at engineering as maybe another field if you want to go back, maybe get another degree, because um, at some point, I mean, we're importing a lot of foreign workers in here for that because other countries specifically train them.
Hmm.
They have a policy of like we need X number of engineers to help our economy grow and flourish and be creative and be able to compete. But I mean, we don't encourage it here. I don't know why,
Mm.
um, but it certainly is something that's wide open. If you believe in America and believe in yourself, and there's a wide open frontier for any number of things when it comes to technology. Even if you're in that field, we're just scratching the surface of what we can do. I mean, imagine what we've seen over the last 30 years. Imagine where we're going to be 30, 40 years from now.
I can't. I feel like we're living in the George Jetson age, you know?
I
So I can't imagine. I don't know.
mean, we literally could have hover cars. Somebody could come along and be the next Tesla. but only make hover
I don't want hover
electric.
cars. Can you imagine your neighbors driving around in hover cars? No, no thanks. I'd
Wow.
walk.
I've seen Star Wars enough to know I want that Luke Skywalker hovercraft in the beginning. Yeah, that'd be great.
Well, I got to tell you, so our Tesla arrived. And it took me 2 weeks to shake hands and become friends with the Tesla, which was really strange having a car in my driveway. And I'm looking at it and I can't drive it because it doesn't know who I am. So it was really weird, but we made friends and I've gotten in it. And I've got to say, that thing is 100% torque. It is the fastest car I have ever driven. And it's very strange because our emissions comes around. My husband's birthday is in January. And, so he's on the phone with the teenage girls and like, you got to get it done. You got to get it done. And I'm like, do I need to get mine done? He's like, no.
So funny.
But yeah, it's strange. So I feel like I'm already there. I'm with George Jetson. I don't want a flying car. No thanks. And I'm good. So I can't imagine 30 years from now.
Now enjoy the Tesla because those are still in high demand. But yeah, I was going to tell you, there are a couple of pieces of news coming out that people probably will want to know. And I guess as a business owner, anytime you're dealing with capital and capital raising or whatever you're doing or expenditures, the Federal Reserve meets on the 31st and the 1st. All right, so that's their 2-day next meeting. It's expected that they're going to raise 1/4 of a point. So they backed off those 75s, and December they did the 50, and now it looks like February 1st they'll do 25. At least that's the bond market is sort of predicting it, and the bond market is pretty accurate. So, so we're starting to see some of the rates. Housing, mortgage rates are starting to trend back down. Rents are starting to trend back down, we're starting to see some good signs of easing inflation. And maybe by this time next year, January of 2024, we won't be talking about inflation.
That would be really nice. I've got to say, so I've been house hunting. My daughter in college, she is house hunting in the area, and it has been really interesting. It's been interesting in getting other family members who don't really pay attention to the real estate market. And I find it fascinating. So that is one market that I always have my nose in, and really for the for sale market. But now I'm in rental because that's what she's looking for. And it has been astounding that when we first looked a few months ago, it was $1,700 a month to find a 1 to 2 bedroom anything. May that be a small older home or a condo, townhouse, duplex, apartment. Any apartments right now are higher than single family homes in Atlanta. So if you want a 1-bedroom apartment, the average is $1,700. A 3-bedroom apartment is $3,000 a month.
Why would anybody live in an apartment that's a mortgage? I would at least build some equity up.
Yeah.
I know a lot of pains and like you got to deal with plumbing, all those things that your apartment complex does for you, like the landscaping and the lawn and all that. But you're throwing money away, really. So I like the concept of ownership, and that's what young people need to start learning a little bit more. I mean, the whole minimalist crowd, there is such a thing as ownership, and I think younger people are starting to get it. We're starting to see more younger people put money in investing, which is amazing, more than our generation did. That's awesome.
Yes.
There's another really interesting piece of news I wanted to bring up too, and working from home has been a thing for a while since the pandemic, and last year we saw a lot of offices, like they started saying, all right, everybody get back to the office, the return to the office, or they call it RTO. Is what, if you see it in a headline, RTO, that's what it means, return to office. So they planned for all these big numbers of people to come back to the offices, but still in like 10 of the top major cities, the office occupancy rate is still about 50% below where it should be.
Wow.
According to a recent study that I read. So I thought, oh, that's really interesting. So I guess 2023, I guess some of the heavy-handedness on returning back to the office, because a lot of workers did not want to comply with that. They're kind of putting it on the brakes a little bit to not be so heavy-handed. The only one that seems to be heavy-handed, Disney recently changed their CEOs, and that was a big deal because the other guy was not so good for the company. As a matter of fact, I was like, I kept watching the stock price, like, all right, how low is this going to go? but so Bob Iger is back, and he's one of these guys who's like, hey, listen, you want to work here, you got to come here. So he's sort of the only guy who's putting a hard line, it seems like, on coming back to the office. And he may be a leader in some of the with CEOs. He certainly is. So we'll see how that works at Disney. And if it really actually works at Disney, we may see that trend kind of reverse and people kind of getting hard, heavy-handed, get back to the office. But the leash on people working from home is starting very short. So you make a couple of mistakes, you're gone. They're going to hire somebody that's going to show up at the office. So, or if you fall below trend in your productivity, you're gone. So that leash is getting really short, even though they're being lenient on enforcing the return to office, just because a lot of workers wouldn't apply. And you can't go fire people en masse like that, people you need, but people can be replaced if they, kind of work from home, get a little complacent, fall behind schedule, fall behind your productivity standards and things like that. So so I just want to toss that out there. If anybody's working from home, keep that in mind, because that seems to be a trend that has been talked about among CEOs and interviews over the last maybe month, I've noticed.
That has to be a shock to a lot of people's system, because really a culture shock, because everybody went home for the pandemic.
Yeah.
And we're talking like late February 2020. And you could basically do whatever you wanted until maybe mid last year. That's a year and a half of showing up in your pajamas. Maybe you got a little vodka in your coffee, and now you're cut.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
A Zoom call in your underwear was probably not uncommon amongst some people.
Not
Unless you went in, and then underwear apparently for some people were optional. I don't know if you remember that handle. That never gets old. That's just too funny. That never gets old. But yeah, it's you're right. It's got to be a shock to some people. So, but if you're one of the folks that work from home, just kind of keep that in mind. If you're kind of hesitant to get back to the office, that seems to be a growing trend among top leadership at companies. And if that's a trend, it's just a matter of time before that filters down to smaller companies that allow the same thing.
Sure, because if you're talking about they really expect you to be 100% focused and dedicated, that means you have to get a babysitter for the kid. I can imagine they're not going to tolerate, little Joey in the background screaming for quackers. Like that's over.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, one thing, you being in Atlanta, I will. There was another article I read recently that said the 10 best cities to buy a home in America right now are all in the South.
Really? What are they?
Trying to remember. Let me see if I can.
Let me see if I can guess. Nashville.
Well, top one. Your market, Atlanta, was the top one. I remember that.
So they
like the area.
Marietta, yep. Marietta. Swanee usually is always in the top 10. Nashville.
Raleigh, North Carolina was another one. I remember that.
If I had to guess, in the Nashville area, it's either going to be Hendersonville or Franklin, or both. Both of those areas are really nice. Franklin is south of the city, and Hendersonville is northeast of the city, and they're beautiful. And then Florida, goodness, so many places.
This top 10 list. I'll go from 10 to 1 and see if this is shocking to you or not.
Okay.
Number 10 was Knoxville, Tennessee. That I remember. That was kind of surprising to me.
Yeah.
I figured Nashville would be. San Antonio.
Okay.
And I guess the New Braunfels, Texas area. Okay. Median home price there is $342. Okay. Jacksonville. So yeah, that was one. Jacksonville's a really nice town, though. I like Jacksonville very well.
Okay.
This one was surprising. Huntsville, Alabama.
Okay, yeah, there's a lot going on there.
This one was sort of surprising, but not because it's not a great town, but Charleston, North Charleston, South Carolina.
Okay. Yes, that's pretty too.
And then you mentioned Greenville, Anderson, Malden, South Carolina.
Okay, so that's number 5 is Anderson Malden.
Yep. Number 4 is Fayetteville, Arkansas. The Springdale Rogers area, Fayetteville, Arkansas, Missouri.
What was number 3?
Number 3, Dallas Fort Worth.
Wow.
And Arlington, that little hub there. 2 was Raleigh, and 1 was Atlanta.
Really?
Yeah. Raleigh's always been kind of I guess, I don't know how often you've been to Raleigh, but I've driven through there many a time. And I know people that just that leave here from this part of Virginia. They specifically want to go to Raleigh and Durham to work down in that area because there's a big technology hub and a big medical hub down there, and research facilities. It's really interesting down there. I went a handful of years back down there to a friend of mine was at a conference and said, "Hey, what are you doing this week?" And at the time, I had nothing going on, so I went down there. And I was right between where UNC and Duke, like right between the two. So I was sitting in this little this bar lounge area, and I was so amazed at like how to split right down the middle. Like half the people coming in were there for some event at Duke, and the other half there for North Carolina. I'm like, I really hope a fight doesn't break out here, but because they were rabid fans down there when it comes to their basketball.
I'm surprised that there's a couple of places that aren't listed in the Southeast. I always enjoyed Tybee. So in Georgia, we have mountains, we have plains, we have beach, we have everything in Georgia, which makes it a really nice state to film in. But I digress. So our beach area is really a little island called Tybee, which is outside of Savannah. And I enjoyed it because there's a lot of military guys doing their workouts and stuff on the beach. So that's, it's sort of like Virginia Beach. You see that up there too. And I'm surprised that's not listed. Pawleys Island is very popular. It's also off the coast of South Carolina. So it's about 45 minutes north of Charleston. There's so many different places that are really great places, low, medium price to buy a home. The cost is fantastic. Now we are in Atlanta catching up to the rest of the nation in our cost. And that's sad to see.
What about a little place called Jekyll Island?
Yeah, Jekyll Island is really nice. It's fun, beautiful. I mean, just absolutely beautiful. Charleston, not so fun to swim in the ocean because you have some pretty nasty rip currents. So, unfortunately, there's a lot of people that get out there and try to swim and they're not successful off of the coast of Charleston.
This is kind of interesting, though. Jekyll Island, we talk so much about the Federal Reserve. Did you know that was the birthplace of the Federal Reserve?
No.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that.
Oh.
There were so many people that opposed the central bank here in this country back that I'm trying to think, was it President Wilson, I think. There were so many of the rich people like I'm trying to think, like Carnegie's and all those rich elitists, right, that were up in upstate New York, Boston, New York City, Manhattan, and that had owned rail and oil and all these big Rockefellers.
Mm-hmm.
They all went in secret. They actually took a very secret way so no one would see them traveling, because there were a lot of reporters at the time that thought something suspicious was up, and they were following where these people were going. So they actually private rail cars instead of traveling the way they normally would, and separate ways, separate from different directions, and all met down on Jekyll Island because no one would suspect where they were meeting at. And that's where they had their first secret meeting to develop and design the Federal Reserve here in the United States.
That is crazy. I never knew that.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's an interesting couple of conspiracies that go along with that, but we'll save that one day for the Gonzo Chronicles.
Okay.
Because, but no, that's fun stuff. A lot of people don't know that, but right there's a little. Suppose I haven't been yet, but I do want to go down to Jekyll Island. There's a little building when you can go into. They have the plaque on the wall that's where the first meeting was to develop the Federal Reserve.
That is so crazy. So since you mentioned the Gonzo Chronicles, would you like to tell us what that is?
Yeah, so a lot of people that have seen me on other shows of yours, especially like the Murder Mystery Show and all that we talk about, I write under a pen name called Cyrus Alderwood. And I have a podcast where I kind of wanted, just instead of getting away from like all the business and the day-to-day politics and money and all this stuff that I work in, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to use the Gonzo Chronicles to, one, promote the books a little bit, but two, there's so many weird topics out there, unsolved mysteries, all kinds of things that we could talk about, and conspiracy theories, just fun stuff. So I have a podcast called the Gonzo Chronicles, and you can listen to it on let's see, podbean.com if you want to go there. But you can also, if you have a smartphone, you can listen to it on iTunes, Spotify, your Amazon, Google Play, all these places. So anywhere you listen to your podcast, just type in the Gonzo Chronicles or Cyrus Alderwood. That'll pop up, and then make sure you subscribe. It's free. I don't do a Patreon where people try to make money off of it. And I just do it because it's fun. And Elizabeth, you come on sometimes. We talk about some cool stuff. We talked about the still unsolved Black Dahlia murder mystery from the 1940s that took place in LA that people have made movies out of and still talk about to this day. So we had a really good conversation around that topic. So yeah, you've been on quite a few. So we talked about quite a few mysteries. So make sure to jump on there and subscribe. And while you're at it, I have a YouTube channel. So if anybody wants to subscribe, just look up Cyrus Alderwood. I do that under the pen name also.
Yeah, we've done some fun episodes of it. Now, of course, it's audio only, so no video. But I remember doing one show. I was in the bathtub. I don't remember why, but we had a lot of fun with that.
I Skyped you at the wrong time, and you're like, hello? Thankfully, there's bubbles everywhere, and then your head floating above it. I'm like, hey, how you doing? And I was like, I thought we were going to do a podcast. Like, yeah, I'm ready. Like, okay.
Yeah, so it's a great show. Definitely check out the Gonzo Chronicles. So before we started the show, you had mentioned that you do have some knowledge to share with us. And that's a great thing about the show, is that you always help and so genuinely help people learn and understand about finances, about investing, and how we can do better. And I really appreciate that. So many people do, because the way that you explain it is at a common level. You're never over anybody's head. So you had mentioned that there were habits that you would like to talk about.
Yeah. I've read a lot of investing books over the years, and countless articles. And I hate to admit, my nerd type thinking is every day when I get up, I start looking for one. I'll watch something motivational or a TED talk. Not that I need extra motivation, but it's always nice to listen to something like that, and then or a TED talk and learn something. But I'll listen to a lot of successful investors and hear their talks and their discussions and interviews. And there are certain things that really successful investors do, and it's nothing that's complex. It's all easy to understand. It's just a matter of doing. It's like the whole Nike slogan: just do it. Don't question. And we've talked about the steps to having a successful investment plan and things like that, and things. So it kind of goes along with that. But I guess like the first thing I want to say when I start out is we talk a lot about value investing and finding good companies with good solid balance sheets that pay their investors dividends, or good growth companies that, even if they don't pay dividends, have a good solid business and a business model and good leadership, and something that you can, because we're not investing for 10 weeks, we're investing for 10 years or more. Yeah. If you can't envision a company being around 10 years from now, you probably shouldn't be investing in it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So remember that when I talk about value investing and finding things that are a good value, and a lot of people think cheap stocks. Well, and I've said sometimes stocks are cheap for a reason. So you have to be able to determine the difference between the two. And it's so I just kind of wanted to remind people if you're doing your own research and looking at those types of stocks, you see something cheap, keep that in mind. I would, and also this is like just a little nugget. I would rather pay a fair price for a great company than to pay a great price for a fair company.
Mm-hmm.
So think like that. So I started listening, over the years, all these things. I just jotted down this week. I decided I was going to write an article for LinkedIn, and I'm on like one of the, I guess you call it creator list there. So people can follow instead of like connecting, so to speak, but I can still follow you or connect. And so I jotted down a list of 5 habits of highly successful investors. And the first thing is to make a list of goals. Because if you don't know why you're doing something, you're not going to do it well. And that's true for anything. I mean, why are you taking that new job? Why do you want to go to college and major in political science? Or why do you want to be a teacher? You have to write down a list of the whys of something you want to do. So why are you investing? You know, every job posting has a list of goals and responsibilities. So before you take a new job, you know what the objectives are, and you should. You know what you're aiming at. When you sit down to plan a vacation, you give plenty of thought as to what you want to do. I'm sure you and Brett sit down and think, okay, what do the kids want to do? And you know, when you plan out your vacation, you think about all that, and you make sure that you work all that sort of in the itinerary. I don't know if you have a strict itinerary, we're doing this or that, or like some flying by the seat of your pants, but we know we're going to do X, Y, and Z because we want everybody to be happy and have a great time. So you make a plan to do everything so everybody can enjoy themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But most people, and this, you know, over the years of, you know, like I mentioned before, I've worked at Edward Jones, I've worked at Fidelity, and then worked on my own. Over the years, I've talked to thousands of people that are investing. And I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that most people spend more time considering what kind of job they're going to change to and how much what they're going to do on their vacation and planning that vacation than they think about what kind of life they want to live in retirement.
Mm-hmm.
Or what kind of lifestyle they want to live leading up to retirement. They don't think about those things. That's why it's important to write down the why of what you want to invest in. What does financial freedom look like to you? Here's some homework. This is not a hard thing to do. 250 words or less. We're talking about a couple of paragraphs. What does financial freedom mean to you? For some people, it may mean, hey, I got enough money in the bank that if my car breaks down, I can pay for it without whipping out a credit card. Or if I want to plan an ad hoc vacation, I can afford it and not, you know, put myself in a hole, or, you know, I'm not living paycheck to paycheck. I mean, financial freedom means something different to everybody else, you know, to different people. You know, for Bill Gates, it may be, you know, having 4 yachts. That's not going to be in my my wheelhouse, but, you know, I mean, but having, you know, freedom to take trips when you want to and things like that, and just kind of enjoy life as it comes at you is, yeah, that's freedom to a lot of people. So the first step in the process is take some time and envision what kind of lifestyle you want in retirement or leading up to retirement, or whatever you're investing for, whether it's college or whatever. People invest for different reasons. Make lists. You make a list of what to do the next day so you don't forget. This is quite important. So it's important to make a list of that too sometimes. Write those goals and dreams you have down on a piece of paper. Keep it with your investment statements, or, you know, stick it up on your desk at home, you know, where everybody uses it, where you keep your computer or something, and keep those goals in front of your face on a regular basis. Are they reasonable? Are they reachable? Are you on track to have that kind of lifestyle on the day that you show up for your own retirement party? That's a question you need to ask. So that's one habit. People will think about that. They know the why. The second habit was, successful investors will make a plan and they do the research, they do the homework. Or if they don't have time to do that, they have an advisor that will do that for them, and that they make sure that they understand what their goals are. Ben Franklin is credited with this statement I've said on here probably a dozen times. Failing to plan is planning to fail. So he was the one actually that was credited with saying that, the first one to say it, but who knows who said it. But you've probably heard that enough times, probably from me and or around the workplace, to roll your eyes. And it's cliche, but it doesn't mean it's not true. And after you know what your long-term goals and dreams are, the next step is to have that plan. So successful investors will have that plan. But that's a lot to think about. So that's why it's important when you're thinking about that plan. You know, if you have a spouse, talk to your spouse. If you have some other friends that are planning their retirement, maybe you sit down, go out for drinks and talk about, hey, what is everybody planning? How are you doing this? Maybe read some articles, or like I said, if you don't have time, talk to an advisor.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're here for. That's why having a long-term plan that you're confident in is vital. because no one likes to see losses in their portfolios, even though sometimes they're just going to happen. The last year and a half has been a great example of this. But it takes a strong stomach to be patient, and a down market will certainly test your patience. I mean, I work in this stuff, and I've seen plenty of it, and it tests mine every single time. I used to be bald because I pulled all my hair out. No, I didn't. But that's why having a long-term plan that you're confident in is absolutely vital. Plan that's specific for you, not cookie cutter. Cookie cutter plans are not for everyone, and there's a lot of firms that do that. Those robo firms, and that's fine if that's all you want to do. But have a plan and stick with it. Sticking with it's important. Here's the biggest habit that's different from that really highly successful investors have. Your Warren Buffett's, for example. It's the mindset. This is the best habit that you can develop. You need to think long term. That's what they do. They think long term. Most investors make a long term plan, but they fail to match that plan with a long term vision. Like you were talking about before, everything's flying at us so fast. We pay attention to the daily and weekly ups and downs in the market. We get caught up in the emotions that come along with the business cycle, recessions, expansions. We live in a culture where we have to make decisions fast. You're like this or that because you got two ads. You mentioned something, and then I swear to God, you go to Facebook and there's an ad for something you were talking to a friend about yesterday. How that happens, it's nuts. But like you have everything flying at you so fast. And we have a culture where I mentioned this, I don't know how true this is, but maybe we don't have so many young people developing ADD. Culture just moves so fast that you're constantly looking around. We want instant gratification. Instantly. And over the market, with rates were at zero, interest rates were at zero. Well, the market obviously was going to continue to go up, right? So, because there's really no cost to reinvesting in your business and things like that, and it was very cheap, and so you get used to these unreasonable returns. So you get caught up in all these ups and downs. That's when major investment mistakes are made. Guys like Warren Buffett know this. That's why when the market's down 20-30%, they're not selling anything. They're not. That's when average investors try to time the market, or I hate to say it, a lot of investment advisors will try to time the market. That is a foolish game. It's a foolish game. Timing the market, no one can time the tops and bottoms of the market. If they say they can, and you're talking to them, and you're talking to an advisor, and they tell you this, get up and walk away. Do yourself a favor, save yourself a lot of hassle and a lot of heartbreak. You're in the housing business. So if a young couple, they get married, they go out, or anybody, they go out and buy the house. And over the next year, that house, the value drops 10%. You're not going to go out and sell your house. That would be ludicrous, right? You're not going to do that. So when you invest in things, the mindset is to think long-term, because you have a long-term goal, have a long-term vision. You ought to be glad when prices come down, because if you have more money, you can buy more of it. Think that you're owning something, and not a great company, but you're owning a piece of America. You're owning a good company that's maybe it's been around for a long time. You're owning a piece of America and where you think the country is going in the future. Because I always like to think that our best days are ahead of us. That's kind of like an old Ronald Reagan saying. But here's a good analogy. Like there's football on tonight, right? We're playoff time. And the Bengals are in it, right? So I'm excited. But if you're the coach of a football team and you start the game, you kick the ball off to the other team, and they run it back for a touchdown, are you going to feel defeated already? It's the first quarter. If you panic and you suddenly decide to get off your game plan, and then the other team, they're like, you're likely to end up on the losing side of a very long game, because you're playing reactionary football, not proactive. You're being reactionary, not proactive. And football game is won over 4 quarters, not over 4 minutes. And people need to look at their retirement that way. Man, my nose is itching here tonight. But when it comes to your long-term investing, it's the next 10 years that matter, not the next 10 months. Successful investors will understand this, and they don't panic over market corrections and recessions. They take advantage of those times at dollar cost average. So that is a very key. That to me is the most important thing, is to match your patience and your vision time frame with your goals time frame.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I see over and over again is the market was, the rates were down for so low for so long. And people they come in like, hey, the market's been going up. That sounds like a good thing to me, because we're so short-term focused. We just see what happened behind us, right? And they get in, and then all of a sudden the market starts correcting. Oh, they get burned. They're down 10%. They're out. They don't come back for a long time. Those people generally don't come back for a decade. But according to some studies that do that.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's somebody they want to invest, but they look, well, everything's down. Why would I do anything? The market just goes down because they're short-term focused, like vision. And I think that's part of just the culture. We want everything now, instant gratification, that's just sort of part of it.
Yeah.
The next, the fourth habit is that successful investors diversify. They understand that by diversifying your portfolio, you're actually limiting risk. So having a diversified portfolio with a proper mix can help you grow your assets with a level of risk control that fits your situation.
Mm-hmm.
So understand what diversification is. That's what you do to make sure you kind of sleep at night. You're not too nervous about the market, even when it's down. It's like, because some parts are going to be up. I've literally logged into a client accounts and looked through the holdings and things like that on down days. The market was down, I think, a couple of weeks ago, pretty significantly one day, and I'm like, wow, 2/3 of everything that we hold here for our clients were up. What's going on today? But it was, again, part of that value thing, and a lot of people are kind of moving from tech into more value. So I thought, that's good. It's nice to see that on a down day. Now, but I've seen up days where half of what we have in the portfolio might be kind of down a little bit too. So you can never really say day by day when the market's going. But but if you diversify, just because you're diversified, there's no guarantee that you won't see losses or guaranteed gains, but it should give you a good balance and a level of risk and reward that you find acceptable. So that's the fourth habit. The fifth one: save early and often. We've talked a little bit about that, especially younger investors, young women, when they know that they need to save more to do as well as their male counterparts, because of certain reasons that we discussed prior in a show. But successful investors make a habit of paying themselves first. You get your paycheck. You have worked your butt off 40 hours plus a week. You get your paycheck. You save in your company retirement plan. That's great. At least whatever they match. But at that point, yeah, I know the mortgages do, or the rents do, cell phone bills do. You need to go to the grocery. Bills come up, car payment or repairs or whatever. But you worked hard. Pay yourself first. Get in that habit. And when you invest money into something, look at it as not necessarily, hey, I'm investing, short term, that vision of like short term vision. I'm owning something. I'm adding into my ownership of things, especially things that can pay you back while you wait. Dividends, it's nice to do. This is the one lesson I wish younger folks would take more seriously. It isn't difficult to retire a millionaire if you start this practice with your first job. And I want to see everyone succeed. I love seeing people succeed. So keep some of those habits in mind. And if you're investing, are you doing what the most successful investors do? Doesn't mean you have to put thousands and thousands of dollars to work every single time. Sometimes you just have to go put 50. So consider that. So those are some habits that really honestly make all the difference. Hold on to your goals, hold on to your dreams, keep a list of why you're doing these things close by so that you remind yourself constantly. You do something similar like that if you're trying to get in shape or going to the gym. You keep lists of things. You try to go to the gym with a friend. Start investing with a friend.
Oh.
And say, hey, let's see who can do best in their IRA this year. Make it fun, make it competitive. Don't make stupid decisions like, hey, I want to buy this new tech thing Like I said, buy good companies at a fair price, not fair companies at a great price. But make those good decisions, invest with a friend, talk about those things. It makes a big difference.
That's a great tip. And, it's so interesting because you're right. This is the one thing that seems somewhat taboo, or at least to many people that I know. It's either the smart ones that start early and, really they live their life by all the tips that you just mapped out. And then there's a lot of other people that are living life and they're trucking along, and life is stressful and life is hard, and they don't necessarily think about this. But what a great idea to start investing with a friend and have a buddy system of learning, a buddy system of gaining. Like, that's a great idea.
Yeah, instead of saying, "Hey, did you hit the treadmill 3 times this week? Hey, did you make your IRA contribution this month?"
Yeah. Did you see what this is doing? Did you see what this is doing? I mean, just dive into it. And I really love that. Thank you so much for sharing all that information with us. I have your website pulled up, and this is Vista Front Partners. What's the best way to contact you?
Hey, just drop me an email, jc@vistafrontpartners.com. And if you want to talk with me, my phone number is on there. You're welcome to call. If you don't get me right away, just leave a message. I'll get back, or drop me an email and let me know when the best time to talk is. It's not always feasible to talk to people face to face, but I Zoom a lot. And that seems like that's where most people are most comfortable these days. 20 years ago, I would talk to a lot of people face to face or over the phone. These days, it's like, "Hey, I'll Zoom with you are you available too?" Or whatever. I'm like, "Sure." And I'll, block it in for like a half hour, 45 minutes or whatever. But, the steps towards success, if you're somebody that's getting started, or even if you're not, if you're not sure about your portfolio, the next step to succeeding, maybe it's just sitting down talking about it. I don't charge anything for a consult with anybody. You're welcome to talk to me, and if I earn your business, great. If I can be helpful, then that's fine too. But we're here to help, and like I said, I love seeing people succeed, and I love seeing people on a path they're comfortable with, and and get their questions answered. A lot of people, like I said, just they might be able to do this on their own, but a lot of people just don't have time, and I totally get that. You have to live life. This just happened to be my career, and I was in high school, and I decided, hey, this whole stock market thing looks pretty cool, and I got really infatuated with what it was.
Right.
So I just gravitated away from that. So it's we all have our things, and but yeah, it's one shot at life, so let's make it a good one.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I would love to have you on the show again. Maybe if you're available next weekend. I have a 20s, which I'm finding myself calling them. They're no longer teens, they're 20s, and they're leery about building their credit with do they get a credit card and pay it off every month? What would be the best way to build their credit? So I'd love if you're open to it. I believe we've touched on the subject, but what would be the very best way for a young person to build that credit? Because, they want to buy a car, they want to buy a house, they want to do things, and they're just a little lost on how do I present myself the very, very best way to a lender.
Because a bad credit score, you may still be able to afford a car easily, but if you're having to pay payments on it, if you're not outright buying it, that can cost you a lot down the road, just like a house. Half a percent makes a big difference over 30 years.
I'd love to chat about it if you have availability. So let's connect throughout the week and have you on again soon. Thank you, JC.
Yeah, put me in, Coach. And anybody watching, if you have any topics you'd like to hear me address or get my thoughts on, feel free and drop me an email or drop Elizabeth an email and let us know. I'll be glad to field any questions or any topics that's pertinent to whoever's watching.
All right. And again, your email is jc@vistafrontpartners.com. That's jc@vistafrontpartners.com. Thank you so much, JC.
All right. Thank you, Elizabeth. You have a great weekend. Well, enjoy the rest of the weekend.
Yeah. A great couple hours left in my weekend, and that's a good thing.
All right. Good night, everyone. Have a great week.
All right. Good night. Thank you, everybody, for watching. As always, we are blessed. You are blessed. Mwah. I love you. We got a couple more shows coming for you, so stay tuned. Take care.